How's it going, everyone? And welcome back to another edition of the Stupid Questions podcast. Today on the pod, we're going to be talking with Katie Zaferes. This is her second interview, so round two. She was on, probably close to a year ago, episode number 48. So it's awesome to have her on again, some 80 episodes later. And we get to talk about a lot of different things. We talk about religion. We talk about her experience with leading this new program called the AUXO Collective, which is similar to the Leads program. She just got done actually visiting the Leads program over in Europe at the university to see how she wants to continue to grow and develop the AUXO Collective as it's partnering with her and USAT to create a daily training environment on the East Coast near Cary, North Carolina. So we talk about that, and she's pregnant again, so that's always a fun part of the conversation. And yeah, so many other things. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to a round two interview with Katie Zaferes. How are you?
I'm good. I have a very annoying cold right now.
Oh no.
Besides that, no, we're good. It's turning into springtime here in Cary, so like all the
Yeah.
blossoms are coming on the trees and it's
Mm-hmm.
well today is chilly, I guess for anyone who's actually in the cold weather. I won't say cold, but
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to just being warm all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you usually get allergies and stuff? Is that what's kind of offsetting the cold, you think?
No, no. I mean, the it's known as like pollen apocalypse because then
Yeah.
the pollen's like insane. Um, but no, I come away unscathed in that part. I think I'm just a little run down. So
Mm, yeah. No, I hear you. So, like, I grew up in North Carolina as well. I think I may have mentioned that before. That in Tennessee and Georgia. But yeah, I remember every spring, like, I get bad allergies. Like, I have to
um,
start weeks before. But I remember seeing the pollen, like, go in waves, like, through the air. You can see it. And that's when you know you're in trouble, at least for me.
yeah, there's like a cloud you can see up in the sky that's yellow, and you're like, oh man.
Yeah.
And also just like anything outside, it's just has a dusting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so gross. Hard to keep things clean. So you said you were feeling a little bit run down. I guess is because of the travel? Like you just got back from being over in Europe for a little while, right?
Yeah, I had it before I left, and then I went to Leeds to go check out their program, their triathlon program at the university, and then I got back, yeah, on Friday of last week, so about a
Yeah,
week ago, and
yeah,
it's just a relentless cold, but it was a really good trip. Really happy that I went,
yeah,
and yeah, just getting into the swing of things back at home.
yeah, for sure. Well, before we get too far into it, I should say, I guess, thank you so much for coming on for a round two conversation. These are usually a little bit more informal than the previous because I have somewhat of a script before in terms of questions, but this one's just to like touch base and see how you're doing. So thank you so much for taking the time to make it happen.
Yeah, of course.
So last time we talked, you were in the middle of figuring out if you're going to go back to the Olympics. I guess you were probably thinking a bit internally, like when am I going to retire? And now we're all the way through to March of 2025. Your life, I would assume, looks quite a bit different. So how has that transition been?
Yeah, it was a quick transition. I retired in October was my last race after Super Tri Toulouse. And
Hmm.
then in November, I started a job with USA Triathlon. And also in November, basically the day I was signing, we also found out we were pregnant with our second child. So in the last few months, we've been building a program and recruiting athletes. And for me, just like learning coaching. I
Yeah,
have like I think a really good knowledge base, and I've always been an observant athlete and a reflective athlete. However, like there's definitely parts of coaching that I'm like learning on the go, and I know there's so much more to continue learning in that scope. And
mm,
yeah, just also on the side of building a program, that's also a lot of new things to me. So we
sure.
now we're at a place where we have 5 athletes who will be out here training with us starting in May. 2 of them are already like actually in the area because one of them is going to Duke currently full time in school there, and then the other one graduated from Duke. So we're very excited to have them here. And at first it's like, oh, it's just not what I envisioned as like a daily training environment, because obviously it takes like a bit of critical mass
Mm-hmm.
to have that. But also I think it was a pretty good, like, nice start for me to like more ease into things and
Mm-hmm.
figure out our process, and just kind of do it with a little bit of a slower start.
Yeah, for sure. Well, not to gloss over that, I'm going to ask some questions about that specifically. But you're pregnant again. That's exciting.
Yeah,
Are-
yeah. We have a little girl who, funnily enough, has the same due date as Kimball had. So
Okay.
Kimball's birthday is July 7th, but his due date was July 5th, and this little girl's due date is July 5th. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so funny because everyone says like the second time around is easier. Maybe that's once you actually have the kid, because I feel like I like forgot a lot about
Yeah.
the whole pregnancy aspect of it. But and also like last time when I was pregnant with Kimball, I was literally doing nothing, like just what I
Yeah.
wanted to do, because I didn't have a job. I like didn't have a child. So
Yeah.
so it's a bit of a different experience this time around, where we have a toddler, and yeah, just learning how to do a new job has been a big part of this pregnancy. So
Yeah.
um I'm like pretty far out of any connection with training. I really am on the side of like, oh, if we move our body like once a day, that's a good day for me.
Hey, that's what sometimes you gotta do. I mean, shoot, yeah, you've got a lot you're managing.
Yeah, it's super humbling.
Yeah, no kidding. So if they are born on the same day, you think that's ultimately a good thing, or because you're gonna have two birthday parties in one day?
I like the joint birthday parties. I'll probably be a little sad for Kimball if this baby ends up having the same birthday, just because I don't want him to feel like his third
Completely
birthday
shadowed.
has been
Yeah.
overrun by something else. So I'm hoping it's not the same birthday, but I'm sure there'll be special moments either way.
Yeah.
And we're pretty much, Tommy's birthday is May 20th, mine's June 9th, Kimball's July 7th, so we're all summer birthdays anyway, so it's just gonna
Yeah.
be a big
Yeah.
summer festival
Yeah,
for
for
the
sure.
Ferris household.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then come graduations and everything else, you guys are gonna always be hitting them in the boom,
Yeah,
boom,
yeah,
boom.
yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna be like, when people have like their birthdays around Christmas and they just get the shaft, that'll be the summer version of it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Man, wow. So the new job that you're like have transitioned into since November, technically you are, what is it, the chief performance coach, or how does it work with USAT?
Just AUXO Collective head coach. So
Okay.
AUXO Collective is the group that we have here, and AUXO means growth in Greek, and that's
Okay.
really like what we're like focused on, is just like the athlete's development, and that they're growing in the sport and kind of learning as they go. It's really um like the premise behind AUXO Collective is really like based a lot on my experience when I first started triathlon, and just having an environment that like you can hone in on these skills in a way that is both high performance, but also focused on learning skills and
Mm-hmm.
developing in a way that's like comfortably uncomfortable for the athletes. I think
Mm-hmm.
you can't say you're going to be comfortable all the time learning something new, but I feel like just having a little bit more guidance before they maybe take off into another environment where that, not that it gets forgotten, but it may not be the focus in a daily aspect.
Yeah, yeah. So with that comes a lot of leadership requirement, I would assume. Not only that, like it seems like an almost like an entrepreneurial type of role where you're having to put together these things. So are you confident in your leadership ability?
Yeah, I am. I'm confident, and also I'm confident in leaning on others to kind of help and learn from. So, like my conversations with Joel Filio, my coach, who has been my coach since 2014, December 2014, he's now been a really, I mean, I've always appreciated his coaching style, and I appreciate it even more so now going into the coaching role. And he's been really like open to like mentoring and guidance, and then also like talking to the coaches Ryan Bolton and Parker Spencer, who are
Mm-hmm.
USA Triathlon coaches, and going out to Leeds, which was more so about like their their coaching in their environment more so than like their actual like training regimen. But just really open to learning from others. We also have an assistant coach here, Aubrey Aldi, and he has different experiences from my own. So kind of learning from him as well. So, and even like Tommy, I just like, he's kind of like my person. I just bounce ideas off of like, hey, I'm thinking this. What do you think?
Yeah.
He told me I was going to have to start scheduling in time with him, make an actual meeting, because him just sitting in the living room is too accessible for me.
Yeah, that's so funny. So, with the birth of this collective, was this stemmed from an idea that you had prior to when you would be moving into this role, or did someone kind of pitch the idea to you and it's grown since then? Like, where was the origin of it?
So I would say lots of pieces just kind of fell into place with it. I mean, I found actually a slideshow that I'd done in like 2021 after moving to Cary,
Hmm.
because I just like identified pretty early on that Cary was like a place that logistically would be a really good place for a daily training environment. And like a lot of that is on pool space, because that's a big limiter for like a big group size. And we
Yeah.
have Triangle Aquatic Center, which is just a phenomenal facility. It has two 50-meter pools, one indoor, one outdoor, and a 10-lane 25-yard pool as well.
Wow.
So like,
That's
I
nice.
mean, they have a massive club team. So like, we're not getting pool space anytime after 3 p.m.
Mm,
But that's not usually our standard time anyways for swimming. So
yeah.
I don't find that, and then just like the ease of having like really like strong cycling. I would actually say cycling is probably the deficit of our area, only because it doesn't have any big like major climbs. It's more like subtle rolling hills, every now and again a punchy hill. But for
Hmm.
to find a 3-minute hill, like we have them, you just have to like get to them, and it's like a 45-minute to an hour ride to them, like on
Yeah.
the bike. So that part of it, and then running, there's just so many options for running. And then along with all like the training stuff, it's just like it's a good hub for triathletes in general. They have such a strong like swimming side of things.
Hmm.
Lots of runners here between NC State, UNC, and Duke, and also like Puma Elite is here training. Like Caitlin Toohey has stayed to train here. So like just a really like it, it exudes like a place where high performers are coming or want to stay. I mean, USA Baseball's here. They
Oh, wow.
in the
I didn't
town
know
of
that.
Cary itself has like bid to be the like the home environment for USA Tennis. They were second, so they didn't get it, and they also did it for USA Soccer too, I think. But it's just like is really supportive, I think, of what we're trying to do here, and kind of
Hmm.
like raising to the highest level, but not necessarily like skipping to that part of it. Like
Yeah.
it's like the whole journey, which I really appreciated. And so that, along with like feeling like the US needs more daily training environments, and feeling like there needs to be a place for athletes who like are first getting into the sport at a high level or want to take the next step in world triathlons. So I guess it was a little bit of both. USAT was searching for
Something.
like how to further develop our athletes here, and then I was like, well, I feel like I kind of pitched what I thought, and then it just really the main like best part of it is that the U.S. Performance Center in Charlotte is a relatively new thing for USA Triathlon, and a partnership with USA Triathlon.
Hmm.
And so that's where all of our funding is coming, is from the U.S. Performance Center based in Charlotte, which is a performance center that's on the UNC Charlotte campus. And they're basically working to get the like NGBs or the different sports to come in and be based in Charlotte. And we're kind of like 2 hours from Charlotte, so we're a
Yeah.
little
On
bit
the
of a
outskirt.
commute from there. But to have that partnership has been super nice, because it gives the athletes that are here with AUXO Collective like resources that they wouldn't get otherwise, in the sense of like sports psych, nutrition, sports medicine. And they're even working with us from Charlotte to find like sports medicine contacts here in Cary to help us, so
Hmm.
that we can like have access without necessarily going to Charlotte. So it's been, and then there's strength and conditioning.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things that I think I knew I was not just going to retire from sport and do nothing. I didn't really think that it was going to be like that quick of a
Yeah. Yeah.
turnaround.
Yeah.
But definitely it was like when the opportunity came up, I was like, okay, we're
Yeah.
doing this.
Yeah. So it sounds like to me like you are the hub of many spokes. You're like kind of trying to bring in these different channels from opportunities for athletes and giving them the good environment, and then obviously bringing in the people, and then there's the funding piece, and then you're also a liaison between all of these different organizations. So with all of that in mind, like what are some of the things that you are finding most challenging about bringing together all of these pieces?
I I don't think it's necessarily bringing all the pieces together. It's a lot just like recruiting athletes to like
Mm,
nothing, you know?
yeah.
Like I have
Here's
a
my dream.
vision.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have this vision and I'm really excited about it, but like mostly I think like athletes already have something planned or um just like it's hard. They're like they want to well until we had athletes it would be like, well, who's committed? And I'm
Hmm.
like, well, everybody's waiting for everyone to commit.
Yeah.
So now like I'm excited because we have Maya Riley. She did Claremont Draft Legal Challenge. She finished fourth on the first day and third on the second day. Alex Poole, she's won Claremont Draft Legal Challenge, been top 10 in continent or like America's Cups. And then Dan Gassau, he's coming from University of Michigan, or sorry, Michigan State University,
Okay.
MSU. And he was sixth on the first day and third on the second day. And then Dan Gassau from Queens is coming, and then Faith Duncan, who is the collegiate national champion for triathlon last year. And then she runs a 16:07 in the 5K.
Wow. Yeah.
So we got some great athletes to come and start it. And then also Tommy's doing like a summer sharpeners program in July for athletes who are more committed to like the NCAA running. So they can't
Hmm.
commit to triathlon yet, but rather than just doing a week camp, is like, okay, like if you want to come out for a month, like we can show you what this environment is like and just kind of give you a deeper view of what the future could hold as a triathlete.
Yeah. So it sounds like then, yeah, you're more focused on like getting people in the program and getting it running, get that community kind of up started.
Yeah, and like I think probably another challenge is just trying to learn a lot of different roles at one time,
Mm,
which has been, I would say it's really challenging, but also I've been super lucky because I feel very well supported in that endeavor in the sense that like I haven't gotten to any certain situation and been like, oh my gosh, like there is no path forward, but then just like little things come up. So like right now it's with like housing for some of
mm,
the athletes and it's just trying to figure out how to do the lease in the right way because I don't want to be responsible, but also like we're not sure, like we'd rather have like a place that it was like more like USA Triathlon than like the athletes. So we're like those things. I'm like, well, like
yeah,
I've
yeah,
never
yeah.
done this type of thing before. So kind of figuring it out. My skill set is definitely growing.
Broadening for sure. So a little bit ago, like you were saying that, as if you can get moving in any part of the day, like that's a big win for you. Obviously, part of that is being pregnant, and then the other half of that or pieces of that is just the sheer number of responsibilities now that you have. So are you feeling like you have a balance and you're gonna figure that out? Like, do you have a game plan for the future to make sure that you can still keep up like healthy?
Yeah, I think like game plan for the future is a lot being tying things and kind of like habit stacking with the team. So I don't plan on doing much of my training with the team, but like say they go for a run like right after they run, like that's my time to run. Or um like similarly just having like meeting up with people that really works well for me. So when I just make plans to actually like walk or run, then it's like, okay, great. Like today I went for like a run and did a little strength. Well, mainly walk actually, but like and did
Still
a little
good.
strength because Tommy went for a run. And so
Okay.
I was like, okay, I'll come with you. And I did my own thing and I just listened actually to one of Joel's podcasts
Oh, nice.
during it. So it was a learning, it was a learning walk as well.
Yeah.
Um, but just kind of like using those types of things. And I mean, a lot of my kind of ambition to stay in contact with like physical activity right this moment is just like Kimball's riding his like two-wheel bike and he doesn't know how to stop on it. So like I have to keep up with him.
Yeah.
I'm like sprinting out like completely out of breath for like 30 seconds. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So sometimes I make him ride his Strider bike just so I don't have to
Slow him down a bit.
so
Yeah, that's so
just
funny.
so he's more in control. But I think in the like I feel like so much of it is just like pregnancy and also I have to be honest, like I'm I'm more inspired by the nicer weather. So
Yeah,
like when
to
it's
get out.
warmer, it's gonna be so much easier than
Mm.
when it's crummy. And I have no reason to complain. I'm in North Carolina. It's very moderate weather.
Yeah. No, no, I totally understand. Yeah, I feel like I've already started to become spoiled because I moved to Northern California and we had a couple of days last week that was in the 80s and sunshine. It was so easy to get out the door to go do the running and the biking and the swimming for that case because we have an outdoor pool. And then we had one day of cloudy slash rainy at 48 degrees and I was like, oh, all my motivation is gone. I was like, hold on, I'm getting soft. Like I used to go ride when it was 20 degrees outside and cloudy. Like what's going on?
I know it feels so different, especially because it was like literally like 5 months ago was my job, and then now I'm like asking other people, "How do you train? What do you
Yeah.
do?" They're
Definitely
like,
a
"The
mindset
guidance. I
shift.
need a coach."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely a mindset shift. So I'm curious because of the quick transition that you had, um, like how many years really quick were you a professional triathlete? Like how many years of your life has that been?
uh 11 mainly. Well, I like 11 and a half.
Okay, so 11 and a half.
2013, March of 2013
Yeah.
was my
So
first year as a professional.
yeah, so over a decade of like your life and identity were in that. Like that was your everyday. Transitioning to what you're doing now, obviously, like you said, is very different. So like your mindset around everything has changed. Do you feel like you were able to or are coming to kind of a place of like good closure in that transition? Do you feel like that's pretty clean and moved on?
Oh yeah, that part I feel very confident in. Like I think I got every ounce out of myself and more. Like I never really thought I was going to come back to racing competitively after having Kimball,
Hmm.
or just like in general starting a
Sure.
family. And so I think like these last couple years, like I tried to do it to the best of like my ability. And I think ultimately I got close enough to make it like see it through kind of to
Yeah.
Paris 2024. But I realized as soon as like Paris was over and I hadn't qualified for the team, like I was like, there is nothing that I like want to do right now other and like when it turns from just wanting to compete and get the most out of myself and be confident in like my training and everything to more just like, oh, like you're just on the start line and like I still like wanted to do well, but it was with a far like I wasn't as engaged. And
Mm.
that was when like I didn't really have a plan for Hamburg to be my last World Triathlon Championship Series race, but I did it and I was like, nope, I am done. Like
Yeah.
like I've got no motivation to keep going. And all of it was so good for like basically through then, but it was kind of like my sign of like, okay, I don't have this drive anymore. And I also, even ever since having Kimball, like my process changed a lot. Like before Kimball, I was primarily at camps with Joel, with the squad, out of town, like,
Yeah.
well, actually mostly abroad, and then racing all the time. And I I like that rhythm for me as an athlete and for like even myself and Tommy as husband and wife. It was very fun. It worked really
Hmm.
well. And then with having Kimball, I couldn't really commit to that life as much anymore and I wanted to be home more and but I was never able to find that rhythm in training because I wasn't with my coach. I wasn't with the environment
Hmm.
and that works for some people and like more power to them. But for me to be happy doing triathlon, I need to be in that type of environment, which is also another reason why the like AUXO Collective
Yeah.
is here is because I'm so passionate about the daily training environment having a huge effect on athletes. And
Mm,
in the physical side of things, of course, and training together as a unit, but also just in the day-to-day decision making, when you know someone's meeting at the time and or 11 o'clock you're riding, you're doing hills, everybody's going out, there's no energy that it takes to go like commit to walking out the door and seeing the group versus when I'm on my own, I'm like, well, I could go at 11:15,
yeah.
11:20.
The
So,
structure just kind of disappears.
yeah. So I just really struggled with that and I kept it going, but it was never in the same way as before having Kimball. And also, like, my priorities changed. So I
Sure.
try to get all my training done before 3 just so I could go pick him up and then have the day with him, like the rest
Mm,
of the day. So,
yeah.
um, yeah, it's just different.
Yeah. Yeah, the priorities definitely change, and I know I can think of like other athletes who do approach it a little bit differently, but I take a lot of or I guess I give a lot of respect because I know like being a parent I think is one of like the highest callings you can potentially have because if you can raise good kids then you can eventually have a better society. So like there's a lot to be said there. So for like your motivations and priorities, part of that I guess is having the kid and looking at Kimball in the face for the first time. But do you feel like you have the same or even more level of motivation to like give to him and to your family that you like had for that professional sport?
Um, yeah, for sure. I mean, more, but also like, I don't think when we were doing anything after Kimball that he felt like I wasn't giving him everything or that like, and I
Hmm.
don't feel like I wasn't, but almost to a fault where like it was almost a little, not out of balance, but like it was just very clear that my energy was more like when we were going, as an example, the grand final in, um, where was it? Not Torremolinos, but that's all I keep thinking in my head.
It's okay.
Pontevedra.
Okay.
We had to ride a bus for 30 minutes to get to the race site, and Kimball and my mom came on the bus, and Kimball wanted to sit on my lap, and he's like, it's like wrangling a one and a whatever, however old he was then. And I'm just thinking, this is probably not the, the
Yeah.
most optimal lead into the race. We're very different than I have done things in the past. And
Mm,
so I feel like all the main thing that's changed is just I don't have to feel bad about being half in
yeah, yeah.
to triathlon more so than I mean, he went to like 10 countries in his first year of birth.
Yeah, he's filling up his passport quick.
He was living the life.
Yeah.
I joke now because I say, well, our second child is going to have no passport, but
Yeah.
she'll be all right.
Hey, really quick message. I have to just do a plug for a new company that I have decided to partner with. I've been saying no to partnerships for a while, but Bicycle is the company that I have decided to say yes to, and here's why. Selling a bike on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist can be a complete headache. You have people messaging you constantly, is this available? Then they ghost you. Maybe they're trying to scam you. It is a complete nightmare. But Bicycle is an easier and safer way for you to sell your bike worldwide. You can list it in minutes, and they even give you pricing suggestions that will match how fast you need to sell that bike. Mark Dubrick's used it. Pro Tri News guys are using it. My buddy Ari Clow, all people who've been on the podcast in the past are using it. So if you're interested, go to bicycle.com/stupid questions. Click on that link in the show notes, and you can go there and use code SQ30 to get 30% off seller protection. So again, that's bicycle.com/stupid questions. BUYCYCLE.com/stupid questions and use that code SQ30 to get 30% off seller protection for this amazing platform. So go ahead, go list that bike, maybe even look for a bike and make that dough. Yeah. So, like you said, you just recently got back from Leeds and you went there to observe and to learn. Is there anything that you learned that you were not expecting to learn, like that you observed that has kind of changed the way you think about how you're going to do the AUXO Collective?
Um, no, not so much. It more just validated what I thought I knew about Leeds. And one of the things I love about Leeds is that it doesn't just have the highest performers, but it also has development athletes, and they're all at the same center training and really intertwined, even more so intertwined than I really thought before I'd gone there. And especially for USA and triathlon in USA, I just feel like there's a lot more like separateness between groups and between the levels, and something from when I was, well, maybe just in like a lot of different ways, but I've really felt that being exposed to the highest level, not in a way that's unhealthy or not developmentally appropriate, in the sense of like, I don't want these kids training the 25 hours a week that the highest level athletes are training or doing the exact same sessions at their
Yeah.
paces. But I feel like when you can see what you need to get to next, it just helps with that like pipeline of athletes that comes through and what they're exposed to. So I think more so for like AUXO, I think I still love like the development side of things, but also if there's a like I have like the leads lingo in my head, but if there's
Yeah.
like a national team member who wants to be a part of our like squad, I feel like it'll be a phenomenal fit, because we have, so our develop more on the men's side, but like our developing men would be incredible training partners for national team athlete, but also then everybody, not just the men, but the women too,
Mm-hmm.
see see how the elites are doing and see how like athletes who are competing at a higher level, like what their processes are. And they're just like easy mentors in the sense of they don't even necessarily have to go out of their way, but just
Mm-hmm.
by doing their thing and being a part of the group and hopefully being open to sharing their experiences and everything like that, it just happens really authentically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the other part of that is triathlon. So you can have an athlete who's a development triathlete, however, super fast in the swim to the point of world-class swimmer, and just hasn't developed the bike and the run yet, or vice versa. With the run, it's like super fast runner, but still working on developing the swim and the bike. Or so I feel like at Leeds, they really use the idea that all athletes bring some type of strength, and that everybody can be impactful and can be a good part of the group, um, no matter what their age or where they're at, kind of on the, well, I say no matter what their age. I mean, it's like 18 and over pretty
Yeah.
much, but even at Leeds, they have a gentleman who's getting his PhD, so he's like 40 years old and he's training with the athletes. So
Oh, wow.
just as an example, because their system's very much tied into Leeds University and Leeds Beckett University.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super interesting. Do you think that this program could ever become or surpass what Leeds is in its brand and recognition?
I mean, I hope so. That would be a goal. It's just being able to figure out how like we grow our pipeline so that
Mm-hmm.
more, I feel like we have, from my observations, super strong junior series, and then obviously Parker's men with Project Podium are really starting to develop. NCAA has developed like athletes, and so I feel like if we can just make that pipeline more robust, so especially athletes leaving college, they have an option to actually stay in the U.S. and be, granted, not fully funded athletes, but say you can buy into like this style of program for a reasonable cost for the year, then you can still manage focusing on triathlon
Mm-hmm.
without it being like, oh my gosh, this will never work, because of just like the cost to live and do triathlon is just
Yeah.
too high.
Yeah. So, like you were saying that whoever really wants to be a part of this, as long as they kind of, I guess, fit in that bracket, you want them to come and be a part of it. Is there any type of a person that you would say no to?
Well, it depends on where we're at with this,
Yeah.
because right now it's just having the like limited financial aspect of it. So like we wouldn't be able to fund athletes to be here. However, if they came to be a part of the environment and would bring something to the group, like it would be a discussion. I think further down the line, that opens up to like more and more people. But just because of where we're at with the program, it would be like primarily focused probably on like single sport strengths. And then like as we kind of can grow that capacity. So you're getting me like right after my inspiration trip to Leeds and
Yeah.
preliminary conversations with like USA Triathlon. So what I think this can grow to is much bigger than directly right now. When you ask that question, I'd probably have a different answer than what I hope to have like a year or two down the line.
Yeah, for sure.
If
So
that makes sense.
yeah, no, totally makes sense. I mean, again, going back to the entrepreneur like analogy, I would only imagine that if I talked to you even 6 weeks from now, let alone 6 months or a year, the direction, the vision, everything would like kind of change and morph. And I think that's the beauty of starting new things is you figure out, oh, I thought this, but actually we need to go in this direction, and then opportunities show up that you never even considered. So that's kind of the fun part of doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And it is cool because we can really make it what we want here. And the other cool part about it is there's so much strength in the single sport side of things and in our area that like, well, we don't have to find faster runners. Like the two, if we have
Yeah.
anyone who's ready to train with the Puma elite athletes, like, which I don't think we do right now, but just to say that there's like high caliber athletes that we can kind of tap into different parts, even if, so let's say like an athlete needs faster swimmers. It's like, okay, well, Triangle Aquatic Center, we'll get you hooked up and put you in a good spot so that we make sure that when you do your hard swims, you get what you need out of them. And like cycling in general, that's something we plan to lean into for all of our athletes is the group rides here and lean into that cycling community, because I felt like that was really, really one of the bigger things that affected my career was doing the group rides and getting that like real race tactics and vibe during a ride and the unpredictable nature of them, because you can be quite nice when you're just in your training group doing training sessions, flicking your elbow when you're off, but
Yeah.
group rides, they tend to be a little more unpredictable in the sense of how people are riding or if there's attacks, and all we want is a safe group ride, and I
Sure.
feel like we have that here.
Yeah. And you never know what moods might come that day too.
Right. And I actually think Tommy really is a big is a big piece of how the group rides go around here.
Yeah. Is he a moody guy? Is that what you're saying?
No, not moody, just strong.
Yeah. No, 100%. That's so interesting. So as you continue to grow this, obviously you've got your hands full. I'm curious with like, what does Katie's daily, if you can even call it a routine, because I'm sure you're doing so many different jobs, but like, what does your daily routine look like? Like, how do you structure your day to try to get the most out of it that you can?
So it is very unpredictable. It's like asking a triathlete when I was training what my daily routine was.
Yeah.
A bit, but mostly if in the morning, if I'm gonna get training done, particularly like the swim, I'll try to swim in the morning, and then we normally drop, although Tommy's typically in charge of this, but like he normally drops Kimball off at daycare around 8:15, and that's when I'll kind of start working on my computer. And it depends really on like just going through training peaks, going through races, going through like the logistics or of the group, or like right now we're also organizing like the Charlotte camp for age groupers and the USPC, making sure everything's kind of one with that. So and then we'll meet up. So right now we only have one of our athletes, she's kind of out of training for right now, so we meet with one of our athletes, Maya, for swimming 5 days a week, and that kind of just depends. Right now she's swimming on her, like, well, not on her own because we're there, but like by herself twice a week, and then 3 days a week she'll hop in with our master swim, because I felt like it was more important for her to have critical mass and swim with others during especially her hard swims, and also just more enjoyable in general.
Helps you
So
push harder too. Yeah.
we tapped into that group. Um And then like Saturday and Sunday, we meet her for the run and the ride typically. And Tommy and our assistant coach actually does the run with her right now. And then the ride, again, Tommy and our assistant coach. And we have like a mini crew that's like, um, it just works. And so they'll go to like a parking lot and do skills. And they just raced last week. So, they being Maya and Jack and Dan. But it's only Maya's here, so she's not going to do anything super intense this week. And then, yeah, filling that in with just more the management side and training peaks and looking at the plan for the future, race options, who's going to races, and also trying to make it so it's like, well, we can pick all these races, but we also have to take into account the finances of the athletes and also of USA Triathlon. So
Yeah.
I also had to do my first budget, so that was a big
Oh
thing.
yeah.
So
How did it go? Or how
I
is it
did
going?
it.
Yeah. It's written down. Yeah.
No, it's just it was very insightful, I think, just to see how everything kind of works together, and
Yeah.
definitely good to map out beforehand. But yeah, so that and then I picked Kimball up at like 3:30 during 3:30 or 4. And from there I take him to go swim, go to the playground, we play until dinner, and then bedtime routine, and
Do it all over again.
do it all over again.
Yeah.
So no, yeah, no real structure besides just getting what I need to,
Yeah.
completing what I need to
Yeah.
get done.
Well, because you're used to that, like from the prior lifestyle of being a pro athlete, like you find comfortability in that type of a routine, you think, more than you would something super structured.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's just like some days have a lot more to them than other days, and it's not your traditional work schedule. And I would say actually one of the challenges is just like disconnecting, because it's one of those jobs you could do almost all the time. You could find
Yeah.
something to do with it or be in contact. So just trying to create the balance that I envision, and being like obviously more accessible to athletes when they need me or when races are coming up, but also like disconnecting from my phone at night and just like, okay, like this is family time. There's nothing really that needs to take priority over this.
Yeah. How many athletes, like, are you coaching only just the athletes that are part of the collective, or are you also coaching other people outside of that?
So right now, a little bit of both, but not very much. So I'm coaching one friend who's in the area, and then who's more racing like age group races, North Carolina series focused, possibly age group nationals focused, and then a younger athlete who's still in high school, and that's really like it. Besides the athletes who are kind of either here or going to be here or have some connection to
Yeah.
being here. And so Jack, I coach remotely for now, but he'll be coming in May.
Yeah.
There's another athlete who she's competing in college, and she did swimming and she did track, but she wants to now focus on triathlon. So I just started, I wouldn't call it necessarily coaching her, but just like kind of guiding her. And then once she's done with track, then I'll take over her training for the summer, and then she'll go back to school in the fall. So a little bit like more like short-term guidance.
Yeah.
So kind of a little bit of everything,
Yeah, for sure.
but
Well,
not definitely. I am most passionate, and I think my skill set lies in like the athletes being here and being
in
in
person.
person. I find it so challenging because you miss so much when you can't see the athletes. And if they're great communicators, then thankfully, like a lot of the three athletes who I don't see very often, they're very good at communication and notes, but it's still hard to see because there's so much to be said for being able to look at an athlete and grasp kind of how they're feeling based off performance, yes, but also making it so. And I find this more so in saying like, okay, that's enough for today. more so than like, oh, let's add on something or you need to like push through. It's like, okay, that's good. Like and not making an athlete feel guilty for that, but just being like, that's where we are today, and you did enough work.
Mm. Yeah, for the way that you adjust training, like are you a coach that typically will adjust basically, or not basically, but do you put a lot of emphasis on like how they're feeling and how they're performing, like even mentally, into how you structure their training or change the training for a week or per day or whatever?
As long as we're like, I call it productive fatigue,
Yeah.
which means you're still able to do the sessions even if you're tired, then we won't really change too much off of that. If an athlete is feeling, and it's a lot of trust in the athlete right now to be able to kind of make that call in the sense of like, okay, tell me how you're feeling. Okay, I think we're okay. When you're not able to do a session, like say you're supposed to run like 2:15s for whatever, an 800, and you're running like 2:30s, it's like, okay, we're not like, it's time to call the session. But I rely a lot on what Joel used to do with us, and I think it worked super well in the sense of he does so much by as you feel in building. So like it'll be like we're gonna do 5 by 4 minutes, and you're gonna build 1 to 5, or you're gonna
Hmm.
build 1 to 3 and hold 4 to 5. And I think there's so much in not being specific that can be gained in the sense of you have to teach a little bit because obviously you don't want those gaps to be like super big jumps. And I think as you become more mature in the sport, those builds end up being closer. So like for us, it'd be like starting at like 410 per K and building down to like, well, depending on the session, I guess it could be a big gap, but you're still like within reason of where you started rather than being like 5 minute per K down to 320.
Hmm.
That's pretty drastic.
Yeah.
So I think just having it though go by feel it leaves it a lot more open so that athletes do base how they're doing the session on what they're feeling that exact day. And it leaves this openness for A, you can actually get more out of yourself, but B, if it's off of what would have been prescribed, you don't feel like, oh, I didn't do it, or like I didn't achieve the goal, or this session was completely rubbish. But it just kind of goes back to when everybody just had normal watches and no power,
Mm.
like like you did everything by feel.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's a lot what I kind of go to more so than, especially for athletes who um are remote. I focus a lot more on that type of like build as you feel.
Yeah.
And that's not to say if they like say like, oh, I would like some guidelines. I'm like, nope, you don't get any guidelines,
Yeah.
but I will only do them if asked.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's so fascinating to me just in my own life, when it comes to the perception of feel and the things that we tell ourselves and how that indicates performance. Just for a super quick example, like I spent a week training, and I say training with, it was following far behind Mark Dubrick. And, so he's a pretty good runner. And I was doing a
Yeah.
track session and I had it in my mind, like after we did a few 200s to warm up, it's like, my goodness, this feels very hard. And I kind of already set like a pace in my mind, and I hit the first, 4 of 6 at a certain time pace. And then I told myself, okay, for the last one, I think I can do this, which it was pretty drastically faster. But I said it and then I did it without kind of looking at my watch. And I'm always amazed about like what you tell yourself, how that's able to influence what comes in the future. Because then after that, I'm like, well, I've clearly been limiting myself. Like it was painful, but I was still able to get there. So like, how do you teach that lesson to an athlete? Is it just experience over time? Like you can go beyond what you think you can?
I believe there's a balance with that because I don't want them to do that every single session.
Mm.
Actually, a lot of sessions I'd prefer most of our athletes go with, hey, could I do one more? And if you say yes, then like that's great because I think you want to get to a point where you're like, one more sounds doable. But then there's definitely times where and in sessions where you will finish and you will be like, I cannot do one more and I
Yeah.
don't want to do one more. So just having that balance between like kind of like exhausting yourself every time, which is a very unscientific way of answering your question.
Don't dig the
But
well.
I
No, I
think
hear you.
in order to get the most, what I find is like, again, with the daily training environment or with group rides or with training with Tommy, I was able to get the most out of myself as an athlete because there was something else ahead of me. And
Mm-hmm.
it didn't really matter if it was attainable or not. Like I'd be chasing Tommy up hills and kind of giving him my all. Um, with the group rides, similarly, it puts you in a position where if you want to remain part of the group ride, then you will stay part. Like you will do what you need to stay on a wheel and stay part of the group ride and cover an attack. And those are the workouts where I can remember my heartbeat being in my throat. And so
Yeah.
when I think of athletes, I mean, every athlete's different. So right now I'm projecting a lot based off of my experiences, but
Sure.
just as you experienced, it was letting go of that time standard and just saying, I'm going to go with like Mark or whoever it is and try to see how long I can hold on to. And again, I don't think everyone should be doing training sessions with people above all the time, but there's definitely places for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah, I wouldn't have said that, but yeah, the temptation is for me and my personality, like, oh, I need to always go a little harder. So, yeah, learning how to pull back is definitely, or to end a session with like, oh, I could do one more. Yeah, that's a good perspective. I'll remember that as I go on a bike ride later today. So, shifting gears just a little bit for the last few minutes that we have together. Last time we talked, I can't remember if you said it on the podcast or if it was after, but like every evening you say a prayer with Kimball. You still do that?
We do. Yep.
Okay.
We do still
So
say.
do you consider yourself a Christian then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So here's the question. Um, over the past, for me, so I listen to a lot of podcasts across the spectrum just to like hear popular conversations, what's going on, what's the debate, and like in the overarching theme of like, I guess where culture is moving. I find a lot of fascination in seeing how society bends and turns based on the conversations being had. And about a year and a half ago, I started to really notice kind of this shift toward this idea of like cultural Christianity. So it's like not necessarily saying, oh, yeah, we're Christian, but the principles of being kind and, the golden rule, that kind of thing started to become a lot more popular. So now my question is you are a mom, you have these influences that you want to exert onto your children. So ultimately they become good people. How do you think about the influences that like as your kid or children start to grow older, like the things you want them to be exposed to? Have you thought anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so for us, I grew up going to church. I grew up going to a Catholic church. And I don't know if I'd necessarily say I feel passionately about being Catholic still.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess maybe I'm a little lost in specific religion. So I'd probably gravitate to saying non-denominational Christian at this point. However, we're
Yeah.
trying out churches.
Yeah.
And currently I mean, I'd like to say it was regular, but I've gone to church with Kimball twice in the past month and like taking him to try a different church. And I think it's like finding that community
Hmm.
and a balance of like, while either committing to, I don't know if I need to commit, but like to a religion or non-denominational like Christian church, but um kind of working on, I would like to instill in like going to church weekly, and that's a little bit of a work in progress, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And not something that, so Tommy grew up very religious, Calvary Chapel Church with his family, and he's very much not inclined to do that anymore. So it's a little bit of a difference, but
Mm-hmm.
in general, we pray each night together. Kimball prays when my mom comes. We pray a lot more.
Yeah.
and and I think just instilling that and instilling how we vocalize things out loud with all of our experiences. Um I'd like to think transfers a lot to him, not just in the sense of like Christianity or faith, but just in like, yeah, being a good person and like being open-minded and like when something doesn't go wrong, like making it seem
Mm.
like looking not for the maybe not for the good in it, but just kind of be like, well, this is what happened, but it's
Mm-hmm.
okay. Like we're gonna like kind of like move on from here, and even just like doing silly, maybe not silly things, but pointing out the beauty of the world,
Mm-hmm.
I think is instead of
It's a
although
medicine.
we have found out that we think he doesn't like the weather because we probably wake up and we're like, oh, it's cloudy out or it's rainy out or it's cold out,
Yeah.
but like being like, oh, the blossoms are on the trees, like isn't that beautiful? Or just kind of pointing things out to him, and
Mm-hmm.
um, I guess that's how like we are kind of structuring our lives to
Yeah.
hopefully instill in him the qualities that we'd like him to take, like be. And even when we're praying, it's like we thank God for him, and we thank God for him being a silly boy, a strong boy, and all the like we list out all his good qualities of like a good
Mm-hmm.
listener and things, and then we say, who do you want to pray for? And it can be anything from his teacher to his dog, or like
I love how kids' minds work.
so.
Yeah.
And I mean like a fake duck, not a real one.
Yeah.
So,
But it means something to him.
but
Yeah.
to him, he gets it that he's saying something that he's thinking of, I guess. I don't
Mm-hmm.
even know if it's something I would say he's necessarily thankful for, but
Yeah. Yeah, he's starting to put the pieces together though. I think there's so much that I admire about that in terms of like praying with him and listing out his good qualities, because one thing I've realized in my own journey has been this being able to recognize, I guess, like the internal voices of how myself, like oftentimes, I'll do something and I may not approve of it or whatever. I have like this internal conflict and I'll kind of talk down on myself. And, we all have these inner voices and things that we tell to ourselves. So one time I wrote these down and actually read through them. And now that as you're like talking about, Kimball and you guys going over all of the positive quality traits about him, like you're speaking a story like to him, like, well, this is who you are, so he can identify with
yeah.
it. If I was to go back like to talk to my childish self, I couldn't in good conscience and faith read off those inner critic voices to them because they're just a kid. And I think as we get older, like that's the temptation for all of us, is to like, oh, there's strength in being critical, and like there's a time to be critical, but like all of those negative things can really start to wear down on who we are and that inner child. So I think it's really cool, I guess is what I'm saying, that you're doing that with Kimball. So hopefully the when he grows up, he'll remember those things, because they're almost like a contract of like, oh, these are who I am. I'm silly. I'm good. I'm kind, and that way he can live out that a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think also like for us, just maybe not necessarily in like direct context to that, but like we say, do you want to pray? And he'll say yes. And if he says no, then we'll say, okay, like,
Yeah.
or
Can't force it.
um, kind of just let him. I don't want it to feel like something he's necessarily forced into. And what we found, at least so far, granted, he's only two and a little bit over a half, but he rarely says no, and it's something that he like looks like forward to. And I think that's like a very nice aspect of it, is it's kind of, yeah, it's just the final thing we do before we go to bed. So
Mm-hmm.
he kind of knows that it works for us, and it's also a way for us because we pray for my dad who passed away, and especially for Kimball. I like one of the things we always pray is that we always hope that even though they never got to meet each other, that they know each other's spirits, and like that. And that's also a moment for me to sit and reflect, and like, and I don't do this all the time because some of our prayers become very similar, like they have
Yeah,
like just
repetition.
regularity to them, and we go through kind of like the normal process, I guess, with it. But other times I'll remember to say, oh, we're out on the lake today, and Banff really like to be on the lake. So it's a time not just for us to, it's just like a time for prayer and reflection, I think,
Mm.
in the sense of it. it's it holds us to, okay, like here are some things, other parts of our lives and days, not just in the side of like talking to God.
Yeah. Yeah. Reflection is super important. Being able to be thankful in the good times and the bad times too. Like I think that's super important. It's so funny because I have grown up, especially post being 21 years old and kind of growing into manhood, and I found a lot of pride for a lot of years and like picking myself up by my bootstraps.
Same.
And I think there's something to be said about that. Again, like it's not all black and white. However, my wife was going to counseling because she was like struggling mentally for a while with just dealing with some dark stuff that she had in her past. And one day she came home, this is like 4 years ago, with like a little post-it note after one of these sessions, and it said like happiness is a choice. And internally I kind of like chuckled at that because I've always believed like of course it is, like, and I choose it every day, rah rah rah. But here this past week, like had like 2 or 3 days where I just felt so down, and I was like racking my brain trying to figure it out. Anyway, yesterday on a run, low motivation because of the weather, I went out on the run and I was like, I don't want to be here. But then, like a few steps in, I remembered that post-it note, and I was like, you know what? It is a choice. Like I'm going to choose that today. And I started going through like things I was thankful for. And as I went through that, and like halfway through that run, my outlook on the entire day changed. I had a really tough conversation with somebody I'd been working with that I needed to have, and it ended up really well. And just like that mindset and frame of happiness or thankfulness, I think can give way to happiness. So like being able to have those things is super important. I think that relates to what you said in somewhat. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I for sure, I wish I was still keeping up on my gratitude journal as much as I was before, but I think in general, I don't even have to do it every day to feel like the fact that I've done it for so many years, like
Mm-hmm.
it really is something I will go back to on days when I have a day like yours, where it's just like, okay, well, let me write out like these things to change kind of my mindset. And actually, something my sports psych, this more has to do with just like fear or feeling like I'm in a funk in training. But she was always like, you can be firm with yourself, because sometimes I feel like, oh, I'm too like flexible or
Mm-hmm.
wishy-washy with it, and just like, oh, she's like, you can tell yourself to stop, like, and just be
Yeah.
like super concrete about how you're, because there's part of psychology that's like, oh, I see you there, and like, just you don't really entertain it, but you're just kind of like, I notice you, bad thought. But one day she was just like, you can just like cut it out, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'll try that strategy sometimes too.
Yeah. No, you totally can. And something that's really fascinated me recently has been I've learned this lesson that I used to think that, oh, the personality of a person and who they are as an individual is just the collective experiences that they've had in their past. But I think now what I'm realizing is it's actually much deeper than that. It's not just the experiences, but it's the memory of those experiences. For example, like just as a very extreme example, like when my dad passed away when I was 16, how I remember that is very different than how my sisters remember that and my mom remembers
Yeah.
that. Like there's some things that are common, but as we go through those hard times and then we reflect, like you're saying, back on those times, if we can pick out the things that were good and bad, but like really remember the good things as well, like that really shapes how we view or me, how I view my entire existence. So being able to like look back on a memory and rewrite it to a degree based on like what you want your outlook to be for the future is like such a powerful thing. Because most people you see on the street that are not most people, I shouldn't say that, but a lot of people who have really hard lives, let's just say like, oh, this guy's a heroin addict and he's living on the streets. He may have been sexually abused as a kid. His parents may have died, whatever. How he remembers those moments in his life, um, if he was to tell those stories, will be indicative, I think, of like the choices he's making today. Because like I would tell my story of what happened with my dad very differently from a couple years after to where I am not 17, 16 years later. So it's so fascinating to me like how memory and talking to yourself, like the power of the mind and how that relates to sport and everything. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, the other day I was like we had such a good day, and I like wrote down in my journal. I had a journal for a long time. I just wrote a day to remember. There was nothing particularly. There was nothing really stand out maybe to someone from the outside, but to me, it was just like all these little things stacked up to be just really, really nice.
Yeah.
And I do feel like when you're more open to that, and also when you're more willing to give people a little bit of grace, it's a lot less impactful on your mood than when you're like, well, this person's just a crummy person and did this to me. And it's like, well, you're able to take it more as like maybe they're having a bad day, or you caught
Yeah.
their one off. Like,
It allows you to look deeper a little bit.
yeah, and I feel like it gives you a less critical view of the world. I mean, I say this, but I completely disengage from like any hard things from this, like social media or the media right now, because it kind of protects me, and I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing, but yeah.
Yeah,
Just
it's a wild world we live in right now, and I've been struggling, to figure out how to chew through it, just because I have people who are on across the spectrum, but anymore it seems like you're very hard one way or hard way or the other, and I'm trying to like straddle the line to like understand and kind of grab hands for both sides and really try to absorb those experiences. But yeah, it's very difficult to do, and I don't think that there's a good way to do it. I think that it's just wild.
yeah.
Well, let me ask you just one final question then to close. What are a few things that you are just really grateful for right now?
Oh, really grateful for, we just had a doctor's appointment and baby's heart rate was all good. So very
Huge
grateful for
win.
that. Very grateful for the stage that Kimball is in right now, which is like just adorable, challenging at
Yeah.
times, but like super fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think just having like all these opportunities coming together at this time. And I think at like some points over the past couple months, I felt really overwhelmed and just like, oh my gosh, have I like kind of got in my head, like,
Bit off more
yeah,
than you can chew.
gotten too far in. And then now I'm feeling like, again, a better balance of like, this is the right path, but also we've got a lot of learning,
Yeah.
learning to do.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Well,
grateful for that.
yeah. Well, I'm super grateful that you were able to take the time, especially being sick. As we were kind of 5 minutes
Yeah,
into this
sorry.
conversation, I should have been like, hey, do you want to reschedule? So I should have asked that. But thank you for taking the time and opening up just about the different aspects of what your life is now, and wish you and the family all the best. Obviously, a healthy pregnancy, and that the AUXO Collective will completely take over the world by storm.
Thank you. Yeah, we're on our way.
Thank you so much to Katie for coming on the episode today and opening up about what she has been working on, the transition and the life that she's been having, and just all of the new challenges and exciting times that she has before her, from the AUXO Collective to being a mom again, number two, and so many other things. So thank you so much, Katie, for coming on and sharing the things that you are truly thankful for. If you made it to this point in the podcast, though, just want to say thank you so much. Appreciate you being here. If you are watching or listening on YouTube, if you could like, comment, subscribe, turn on that notification bell, any and all of those things continue to help grow the podcast. If you want to sign up for the newsletter, you can do so in the show notes below. That goes to the stupidquestions.show website, where you can sign up for the newsletter there. And also, if you are on any of the podcast platforms, if you wouldn't mind dropping a review, a comment, a like, if you can do that on any of those platforms, whatever you can do really continues to help. So thank you so much for doing that, and we will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.